So I see a lot of Nigerians always talk about the need for us as young people to actually lead the revolution. But I believe that that revolution is going to fail for so many reasons. Um, you need to understand that the people who are in charge of our country, these are not people who are deterred by chaos. So if you destroy your country because you think that by leading a revolution, that's going to change anything, you're highly mistaken. And the only way we can actually get to a position where we are no longer in this kind of situation is for us to first of all recognize that there are problems and there are powers that are currently holding Nigeria hostage. And each of those must have to be loosened and retied to the proper form before any form of revolution can actually work. Because if you look at other countries that have attempted to do similar things, you will realize that they ended up in a worse position than they actually started. Let's use Iraq, for example. When the United States invaded Iraq in 2003 and deposed Saddam Hussein, at the end of the day, if you look at Iraq today, it's actually worse than um, when Saddam Hussein was actually the ruler in Saddam Hussein in Iraq rather. How about Syria? How about Libya? In the time of Gaddafi, Libya was one of the most prosperous nations in Africa. The standard of living in Libya was relatively better than a lot of countries in Europe. But see Libya today, after the revolution, the so-called revolution sponsored by the United States and NATO to depose Libya's president at the time, Gaddafi. What is the end result? So these are the things we need to know as young people. That simply just saying that you want to lead a revolution is not enough. You need to first of all realize that our country has been infiltrated from top to bottom. I'll give you a certain example. So we have a lot of media houses in Nigeria, and sometimes you wonder why they don't report the things that we expect them to report. That's simply because a lot of the media houses in Nigeria have been bought by the American establishment. A lot of them receive grants from the United States government. So how do you expect people who receive grant from the United States government to um, to be at the forefront of any form of revolution? So first of all, our information space needs to be cleared up. We need to be able to re-educate ourselves. We need to be able to control the narrative. We need to be able to control the flow of information in our own country. I'm not in any way, shape, or form asking that people should be cracked down for freedom of speech. That is not what I am advocating for. All I'm simply saying is that certain body that they use in pushing propaganda have to be checked. You see platforms like Sahara Reporters that claim to be they claim to be championing the cause of the people, but Sahara Reporters have received funding from a lot of very dubious foundations. So if you check those foundations, you will see that a lot of them are actually linked to the CIA. So people who receive those amount of funds, these funds I'm not talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. Talking about millions of dollars. Now, the question I want to ask now is, in that case, what are you going to tell me Sahara Reporter does that makes it warrant that kind of spending and funding, if not for disruption and propaganda? And there are so many reasons why I find it also very confusing why a lot of Nigerians do not know the major source of their problems. If we remember clearly, during the time of Goodluck Jonathan, we wanted to buy ammunitions and we were stopped from buying those ammunitions. As a matter of fact, there's a popular situation where a Nigerian jet carrying money, that's what we had to resort to paying for things in cash because the Obama administration at the time blocked Goodluck Jonathan from making purchases. And what did we want to use those ammunition to do? To fight terrorism. And what caused that terrorism? Terrorism that was caused by the same United States. How do I know this? Very simple. If you trace the root cause of terrorism in Nigeria, you will see that it's directly linked to the crisis in Libya. At least that's when the spike began after the deposition of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya. All of those ammunitions, all of those weapons that they use in Libya, a lot of them began to filter into Nigeria. A lot of those criminal elements as well began to filter into Nigeria. Or is it ISIS that is in Nigeria today? What is the source of ISIS? Was ISIS not a creation of the United States? So these are the things we need to know. So you need to understand that the people that stand to gain, they don't have a problem with Nigeria going have they don't have a problem with Nigeria having a civil war. And it's very easy to instigate civil war in Nigeria because Nigeria is a country with so many tribal divides. Instead of staying together, we like to fight ourselves. So it's very easy to use that to actually divide the country. But as young people, if we must succeed in moving our country forward, we must learn to put our differences aside and know that most times the things that actually affect us can be directly linked to external factors. And we must be in one accord in actually pushing these, external factors out. Earlier, I mentioned the fact that, um, the people who are holding us down, they have no problem in, benefiting even when we're in chaos. Take, for instance, Iraq have one of the biggest US embassies in the world. Do you think they have one of the biggest US embassies in the world because the American government actually love and cherish the Iraqi people? It's the opposite. So as at 2026, you can fact check all of these things I'm saying. As at 2026, when Iran sells oil, the money doesn't go to Iran directly. The money goes to a bank in America. And from that money, the American government literally gives stipend to the Iraqi government to sustain itself. That is what a once sovereign nation has been reduced to. So you can see that in chaos, they even thrive. These are people who thrive in chaos. They sponsor terrorism. So our division does not benefit us. Our division actually benefits the enemy. And we're even talking about the issue of our leaders not doing their best. Look, if we want to properly trace the issue of corruption in Nigeria today, the issue of corruption can directly be linked to from colonial era to the US government propping up people with money in our government. As long as those people are protected and the interest of the Americans or the British is protected, they are fine. So one of the things you see as a deep-rooted corruption in Nigeria today is as a result of external factors propping up certain individuals in the country to be selfish. It's almost like the same thing that happened during slavery, where uh, one individual will just begin to will be in cahoots with the colonizers and decide that, okay, I want to be selling my brothers and my sisters. It is the same thing. They funded these same people. So we must be able to make the right decisions for ourselves. And for that to happen, we need to know the source of our problems. That is why I always advocate for looking more towards the global south, looking more to Asia. They have more to offer than the West, to be honest, because I cannot understand why the average Nigerian would be thinking that China is not their friend, but America is their friend. Where that knowledge, where that understanding comes from, I can't get it. And when I ask, what has China ever done to you? As a matter of fact, China has been one of the reasons why Africa is as exposed as it is today. We owe a lot of things to the development that went on in China. It's not because they wanted to do us a favor. Let's get that straight. And it's not because I'm supporting them. I'm not. I'm just stating the reality and the fact. So their development, them being able to break out of their situation, had a ripple effect in Africa. Most of us today will not even be able to afford a phone if not for uh, the industrialization of the People's Republic of China. So we must learn who to collaborate with, who our friends are, and ultimately, we must be able to develop our own system. I was discussing with a few friends the other day, and I asked a very simple question. And the question I asked was, does Nigeria, a country of over 230 million people, do we even have a ballistic missile program? Do we have a missile program to begin with? So you can see that we are almost like a naked country. We don't control our information space. We have literally no control over anything. So if we must address issue of a governmental revolution, a radical revolution, that revolution must start from education. The education I mean here is not education in forms of like going to university. University is a place where you are literally brainwashed to think in a particular way. That is not what I am talking about. I'm talking about simply learning the source of things. How did this thing happen? What is the root cause of this? And how do we resolve it? And most of our people are still very oblivious to the simple fact that these things are not ordinary. There's a there is a root cause to every single thing that is going on. We as a people must take responsibility and be able to extricate ourselves from this problem before we can develop. It's not normal that a group of terrorists will be terrorizing a country as big as Nigeria for more than 15 to 20 years now without the government being able to tackle it. That points to so many things. It points to complicity on the part of a lot of government institutions. It points to complicity on the hands of, a lot of governors in Nigeria, and even possibly at the federal level. So, a country where terrorists are viewed as people that can be rehabilitated, it's not a country that is taking itself seriously. So, over time, I'll be sharing my thought on these things, but we must realize that just being radical and saying, oh, we want a revolution now, it's not going to change anything. As a matter of fact, it's going to serve the interest of the people who want to divide us. The more divided we are, the more profit they actually make. So we must be strategic, we must educate ourselves, and we must attend to every single issue the way it's supposed to. And importantly, we must be able to build self-reliance when it comes to self-defense. Without a local without a local defense industry, we are literally there for the taking. We are powerless. They can just come and do anything they want. Now I'm seeing this ideology of them pushing this Christian genocide. In as much as a lot of Christians have been affected by what is going on, we need to ask deeper questions. What is going on? Who is doing these things? Who's responsible for these things? Because a lot of Muslims have also died as well. So these things are not as ordinary as you think. So we must be strategic, we must be defiant, and most importantly, we must be united. Thank you, guys.